Welcome to the Libertarian Counterpoint. I'm Richard Fields. On the program today we have Elaine Lucier, who is a sophomore, I believe,
yes,
in economics and German at the University of California, Davis, and the vice president of Young Americans for Liberty on campus. And John Cameron, no stranger to this show, the author of Rewire and Re-Kill and a sales training consultant, among other things. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's been an exciting, well, I don't know, it's kind of an anticlimactic week in politics. Trump won again. Kasich won Ohio, stays alive. Rubio dropped out. Cruz still hanging in there. In his swan song, Rubio warned of a fractured nation. Is that anything we really care about?
Well, I think we have a fractured nation, and I think it could actually be very good. I think it's sad in that the two major parties, in essence, we have a two-party system in this country. The difference between them is infinitesimal. It's microscopic. They're both invasive. They both favor big government. They both favor heavy regulation. They both favor having their busy fingers in people's lives. And really, probably the only difference is, on the Republican side, they believe in the Second Amendment, and on the Democratic side, they don't. And on the Republican side, property rights to extend to everything except for a woman's womb, and on the Democratic side, they don't. But everything else, it's the status quo, it's a venomous status quo, because the differences between the two parties, as I just went on way too long about, are tiny. I mean, it's big government, it's crony capitalism, it's a banking system that's a mess, it's a Fed that should have never been created, and it's just a good old boy network making money off other people's money. So the founding fathers created this three-legged stool so that government couldn't accomplish anything, because they said, one of them said, that which governs least governs best. But if anything, our government works, and I'm going to do that finger quote thing that I hate when other people do it, works too well, because we have, the IRS code would go, 50 stories if it was one page on top of another. So we have way too many laws and way too many regulations and way too many employees and all the rest of that. So it actually works too well. And I think the more fractured it is, the less well it will work. And I kind of welcome that. Now, what I don't welcome is the venom, because what it means is that most of the voting populace doesn't understand that there is no difference between the Republicans and Blamocrats. They're exactly the same. And libertarians offer an ideal difference, and Bernie Sanders offers a little bit more government intervention than some of the liberal Democrats.
I think with that being said, however, when Rubio was talking about this fractured nation, he did...
Beautiful speech.
Yeah, beautiful 13-minute speech that he had, but also in talking about the strength of, still, the perseverance of the American people is something that he, even as, as a politician and, as the product of an immigrant family, did really believe in the kind of ideals of the American dream, and that we could hopefully as a nation transcend those nominal as they are differences, and overcome the venom. And he seemed to me very hopeful, even as he's bowing out of the race, that no matter who's chosen ultimately to be the next president of the United States, that those same qualities that are so ingrained in the hard work ethic and the general individualistic mindset of the American people will still remain the same, and hopefully that'll be enough to kind of save whatever sinking ship we're left on at that point.
Well, I will say that
the fact
that it was 13 minutes is appealing to me, but I didn't actually see the speech, so I won't say.
I heard it, and it's almost in its entirety on Nationalist People's Radio on NPR when I was driving home from somewhere, or National Propaganda Radio. And it really was a beautiful speech, and of all the clowns that are there, if it just came to delivering a powerful speech, president's kind of like I can't say it on air, an unnecessary appendage on a male animal. It's really anymore, it's a ceremonial office, and the only thing that the president does that's really important is propose a Supreme Court justice.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. He also sets the tone for what the regulatory state does. And the regulatory state has become probably an uncontrollable beast when it's controlled or not controlled by presidents who want to attain more power. Case in point, the Obama administration is trying to be an environmental zealotry, trying to be zealotry as far as environmental stuff is concerned. So the EPA, the Army Corps of Engineers, the climate warming
banning
myth.
microbeads and
all of this stuff is they've gone nuts. They've essentially said if there's a vacuum in public policy, we will fill it whether the Congress has authorized us to do so or not. And that's something that the president, through his appointments at the top end, can put a damper on to a certain extent. Can't get rid of it because of civil service, but he can put a damper on it.
That Congress and the courts can certainly put a stop to it anytime they want.
They can
They
too.
can unfund those agencies.
They can. I'm just saying that the president also has that power. He can do it with a pen stroke.
You're right, and he does set the tone, and I would love to have.
And he also can get us into war.
Again, Congress has got to,
but they don't.
Real war.
Congress has essentially given up their power to declare war. They have said, okay, with the War Powers Act, they've told the executive, they've told the president that you can do whatever you damn well please.
All right, you're right.
And
President,
Bush did whatever he wanted in Iraq and in Afghanistan, and Clinton did whatever he wanted to in Kosovo, and the Nobel Peace Prize winner did whatever he wanted to in Libya and in Yemen and in Somalia.
Who's the Nobel Peace Prize?
The last 8 years. Anyway, or 7 years at this point. Yeah.
Oh.
You remember that? You got the Nobel Peace Prize
Which
before?
lets you know the bias of the Nobel Prize awarding agency.
I guess. I'm not sure about that.
It's
It
like
was
the
really-
road, like Rhodes Scholars.
Yeah.
I mean, there are no conservative Rhodes Scholars.
But we have an interesting election season right now. The establishment candidates are basically on the Republican side, anybody but Trump or Cruz. The establishment Republicans, they don't like Trump because he is an outsider from day one. They don't like Cruz because he doesn't play ball, doesn't play well with others in the Senate. Everybody else is fine as far as the establishment is concerned. On the Democratic side, there's only one. It's Hillary. She's the only establishment candidate. They don't really think that they can get anywhere with an avowed, declared socialist. Maybe they can, maybe they can't, but the establishment doesn't think so. So Sanders is out as far as the establishment is concerned. The body politic right now doesn't like the establishment very much, Democrat or Republican.
Do you blame them?
Most people don't like what's happening in Washington, D.C. for some strange reason. So they're going for the anti-establishment, whoever that happens to be. We saw that actually in 2008 and 2012. It was materialized with the success of the Ron Paul campaign. A lot of his support was libertarian, but another big chunk of his support was anti-establishment.
Right.
He was not part of the establishment, and
Grassroots and other
that was part of his appeal,
organizations.
a big part of his appeal. That, people who supported Ron Paul in 2012, a lot of them, unfortunately, are now supporting Trump and to a lesser extent Sanders. So that's a really big noise that we're hearing from the voters, that we don't like things the way they are, we want to change it, and we'll vote for a communist or an authoritarian to change things.
Why not a libertarian?
Well, that's a good question.
It ain't gonna happen, but why not? I mean, why?
Well, that was
a few years ago. I saw a real movement among the youth.
That was the Ron Paul movement
for libertarians.
Yeah,
So,
that was the
yeah.
Ron Paul movement. It's still alive. It's just, there's just no real good spokesman right now. Rand Paul turned out to be a less than perfect spokesman for the libertarian ideology, and there's nobody else at the major party level.
Strange, because Rand is actually, I mean, he's a pretty good speaker. You know, he's a good-looking guy. I mean, not bad-looking. You know, he looks kind of presidential. He's not my type because he's a guy, but you know, he kind of looks presidential. And they talk about what is that, gravitas? You know, I mean, he gives a good
politics,
speech,
yeah.
and he knows politics, but
Policy.
you know, just that the spark just, it always seems like he was like going through the motions.
I think he would get pretty easily bristled, and I know there were a couple of things earlier on in his campaign when he'd sit down with different reporters and they'd ask him a question and he'd turn it right back around on them. I think that there was a lot of genuinely disgruntled energy behind him, realizing that he, you know, in a lot of ways as well, was speaking on topics that the rest of the Republican candidates or nominees, potential nominees, were too afraid to talk about. I remember specifically.
Oh yeah, he brought up, you know,
Audit the Fed.
equal justice as
Arming
far,
ISIS, I think, was something.
the fact that we did arm ISIS.
Right, and talking about the hawks and the Republican
Yeah.
Party being, you know, by and large to blame for that kind of radicalization, or even radicalization may have happened on its own, but you know, having the weaponry to back that up, but being due in large part to sending weapons over there.
In the Republican campaign right now, everybody's out except for the three men standing: Trump, Cruz, and I guess Kasich. And it you know, there's a high possibility, not a probability at this point, but a high possibility that it'll go to a brokered convention. In other words, Trump will not have enough delegate votes on the first ballot to sew up the nomination. If that happens, my understanding is that all delegates become unbound after the first ballot, at which point it's you know, it's an open convention. Anybody can be, you know, they can nominate Elmer Fudd, and
they have,
and
and
he could
elected
be,
him.
and he could be nominated. Yeah, that was in 2000. In 2000, I think. Yeah. So the brokered convention is, you know, a good probability. Is that who does that play out well for? Does that play out well for Cruz, for
The American
Kasich,
people.
Kasich, you know, Paul Ryan, who?
Well, the latest poll, and go ahead, because you were inhaling to say something and I jumped in. Go ahead.
I mean, I do think there's, you know, it kind of in the shadow of Trump and just the kind of ostentatious presence that he's brought to the stage and the political arena. I think Cruz has done consistently well. Like, the establishment may not like him, but there are enough kind of evangelical voting types that, and right, but there is sense he I think he's the closest that we come to a truly conservative or much more conservative candidate than you would have. Kasich is a lot more moderate, and
So where is, I don't know where
Cruz
Cruz stands on this stuff, but there was
Well,
a poll
yeah,
recently
there
that said
are-
that anybody but Trump would basically beat Hillary, any of the top candidates except for Trump. If
don't know
they
about-
were
yeah, I'm
it
not
was
sure.
like
I didn't
Cruz,
see that.
Rubio, I think it was Cruz and Rubio. It might have been Kasich as well, but Cruz would certainly beat her handily. But they did a
Cruz
poll.
has got some of that outsider appeal as well.
And I think, I don't know if you both have been keeping up to date, but there's been just a lot of slam and kind of just running his name through the ground. His roommate in college has come out a lot to say just how he had the opinion of him all through the 4 years that they spent together, that he's just a really crummy guy. And
Who, Cruz?
Cruz, and there have been an onslaught of people who were also peers when he was in college, talking about how he's, you know, just not someone of high moral fortitude and was really just an oddball for those times. So I think, you know, the establishment doesn't like him, and maybe he's just something about his personality, or, you know,
So he's a
lacks
typical political sociopath.
Well, yeah, I mean, that could be, you know, although from a libertarian perspective, how does Cruz stack up on the issues?
I mean, he has made certain comments. I don't want to attribute this in an unwarranted way, but making comments about making the sand glow in terms of
On foreign policy, he's terrible.
yeah, foreign policy. So certainly in those ways, not being
And if you're pro-life, certainly,
Right.
you're not going to be, you're not going to agree with Cruz on that. On the economic policy issues, economic issues.
Pro-choice.
Pro-choice.
Yeah,
Pro-choice.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, pro-choice. Economic policy issues, he's not bad.
I don't
Tax
think so.
issues, that sort of
No,
thing.
he's strong Second Amendment, but he's again the pro-lifers love him, pro-choice people
Yeah,
hate him. But
yeah.
he's gone the other way on civil liberties, on the civil liberties side.
Yeah, on the,
economic
yeah.
stuff, I mean, what's important? I think when it comes to general election, the economic stuff, although it is the most important thing, isn't sold as the most important thing. I think
It
it's
can
gonna
be. I mean, Reagan won his election by saying, "Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?" And, against Jimmy
Well,
Carter,
but-
and that worked for him.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
economics used properly or campaigned upon properly, pocketbook issues can work if they're done right.
Well,
if you've got a good spokesman. I'm not sure Cruz is it, but certainly Bernie Sanders is making pocketbook argument issues. He's wrong, but he's making that's what he's appealing to is pocketbook issues. That's the Republican side. It looks like it could be a brokered convention. I'm not sure if that's good, bad, or indifferent. The Democratic side looks like it's going to be a cakewalk for Hillary, or will it? Or will the animosity between Hillary and Obama finally come to the fore if Obama says to the FBI, to the Justice Department, go ahead and indict her?
Well, I don't think she's going to get indicted. She's part of the royal Clinton family. She knows not only where the skeletons are in the closets, but where the bodies are being soon to be rendered down to fat. I mean, she's got, if it was anybody other than Hillary, she would be in prison already for violating the Official Secrets Act. I mean, basically, she communicated with people. She might as well have been talking over
On a party
tomato
line.
can.
On a party line.
Yeah.
You're not old enough to remember party lines,
No,
but
they used
we
to have
are.
phones that were, yeah. Parents had one.
Yeah,
Actually.
I had one.
And so she might as well have been communicating with a soup can with a piece of
Walkie-talkie,
string.
yeah.
Top secret stuff. But and she's consistently lied about. Said at first that she never did that, and now it turns out that she did it knowingly, repeatedly. And now the guy assigned to basically set up the server for her is singing through, I don't know how many octaves he has, but whatever they are, he's singing through all of them. And still, I guarantee you that she will not be indicted. Now, from Obama's perspective, since he is basically an unavowed socialist, at least now, he was an avowed socialist earlier, but he's since denied that. Sanders is much more to his liking than Hillary.
Yeah.
But since it's all about power, I don't believe that he believes that Sanders can win a general election where he thinks Hillary can. But again, that poll I saw about a month ago said that the top two Republicans, or I think it might have been Rubio and Cruz. There was somebody else, maybe it wasn't Rubio and Cruz. Cruz was one of them.
Okay.
That head-to-head would beat Hillary.
Okay.
So the Republicans once again are going to pick, if they pick Trump, the only person that will lose the general election.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that, I think maybe Trump could actually win the general election, even though he has an awful lot of negatives. He would be the one person who could make Hillary look like the absolute hypocrite that she is and get by with it.
Get away with it. Yeah.
I mean, we've seen over the years how just much of a chameleon she can be in terms of her.
Well, a hypocrite, just total hypocrite.
Right.
Total power hungry.
Right.
Well, there are a bunch of Democratic, powerful Democratic donors who, last time around, gave their money to Obama, and they said flat out, everybody in Washington lies, but the Clintons take it to a whole different level.
They made it an art form, yeah.
Made it an art form.
Well,
Yeah.
so anyway, we're looking at a lot of bad choices, whoever the Republicans and the Democrats nominate, probably. Certainly if it's a Trump Hillary or a Trump Sanders or Either of those scenarios.
What a ticket.
It's
Trump and
awful.
Sanders?
It's awful. Well, actually, I listen to C-SPAN in the morning, and this is kind of a side note, but I listen to C-SPAN because they don't
I don't see
screen
how you can do that.
they don't screen their phone calls, so they get
They
called.
don't?
They don't screen the phone calls.
Maybe
on,
I'll start watching.
on Morning Edition. So you get a real cross section of the American
Excuse me.
populace, and you hear people calling up and saying, "I haven't made up my mind whether I'm going to vote for Trump or Sanders."
Oh my.
That's the level of sophistication, and that's the outsider appeal that both of those guys have.
Which
So
is interesting.
Hillary doesn't even get mentioned then because
No.
she's a known weasel. I guess she gives the weasels a bad name. She's a known what's that slimy?
Yeah.
I think it's always been interesting to me, and just hearing, like, in the beginnings when people were thinking, oh, you know, Bernie Sanders, this guy from Vermont, this senator from Vermont, he's going to put himself out there, he's going to start the political revolution in the United States, and the idea that people have of him as being some kind of Washington outsider, when in fact he's been absolutely the most Washington insider for this whole time. Maybe his voting record is slightly different than some of the
Very slightly, very slightly.
is different than establishment Democrats or
No, that's
establishment
No,
Republicans.
he's
He's pretty much down the line Democrat,
down the line
progressive Democrat.
But he's scary. If he gave the same speech that he gives, that is so angry toward rich people, and he quantifies rich as being pretty far down the list. 2 nurses in California would be filthy rich, according to, well, compared to most of the world they are already, but according to Sanders, they'd be rich. But if you were to replace the word rich person with the word black person, you would see the outright bigotry and anger directed toward one particular class. It just happens to be a class which is not protected in this country. And so it's demagoguery in the economics. There are economics of failure, but
No, and
I don't know.
politics of envy. It's nothing
Yeah.
new. It's
Yeah.
been going on for generations.
well, it's the same thing
question
that Trump's using.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
The question that comes up, you've got 2 really bad candidates by the Democrats and Republicans. Is this finally, after, 50 years almost, the opening for the Libertarian Party to run a credible candidate? I have in mind Gary Johnson, somebody who is a 2-term governor of New Mexico, who knows how to talk in a civilized and comprehensible.
Who's going to
and-
bankroll him?
and, well, that's
It's
a
going
good
to take $1
question.
billion. Who's
Well,
going to write the check?
Well, Bernie Sanders is self-funding. Ron Paul was self-funding with small donations. Gary Johnson could do it if he is able to get the ball rolling. Is he going to be able to get that ball rolling?
I don't know if he's serious about it. I didn't seem all that serious about it last time to me. It seems like he was almost doing it on a lark. Just to and you talked about what Rand Paul did, in some interviews and stuff. And Gary, last election or whenever it was doing some commentary on the side and was just mean-spirited. I mean, he came across as really mean-spirited.
Well, is there anybody else in the Libertarian field that can do it? Are you following it at all?
Not particularly, but I mean, I think, as we were saying, I mean, at a certain point, if there were to be some kind of brokered convention or just have things fall apart, I mean, it's really could it be anyone's game, I think, is the question there. And who knows what people would end
Well,
up.
if it's a brokered convention, they'll probably come up with an establishment candidate. That would be my guess.
So who are the 2 comedians that do the show Bull Pucky? There's 2 libertarian comedians that do they do
Talking about the
magic.
magicians?
Yeah.
Yeah. Las
And I'm
Vegas.
just drawing a blank on them
What
right
about
now. So I think
Penn and Teller?
them as
Yeah,
Penn and Teller.
Okay.
I think Penn and Teller is a co-presidency.
Oh,
Would be, or one is president and one is vice president, because
make-
they've actually got some. They've got some. They have a big following. They are entertaining. They're both really bright guys.
And they would maybe be able to out-talk Trump in a heartbeat.
And well, Penn would just snap his little neck
And
like
make
a
him
twig,
bend.
and then they're brilliant. They're successful. I don't know how much money they got, but they got some money. They got seed money for a nice campaign. I think. I think Penn and Teller would be. Penn and Teller is a co-presidency.
Yeah.
I think them as Penn and Teller is a co-presidency. because they've actually got some. They've got some. They've got some. I think maybe that what we need is an intentional comedian in the White House instead of an unintentional comedian.
And is the Supreme Court nominee, Merrick Garland, has been nominated by Obama for the United States Supreme Court. Is that going to become a seminal issue in the campaign?
Nope.
No.
No.
Now, we're talking about a nominee who is probably anti-Second Amendment. He voted against what ended up being the seminal case in the U.S. Supreme Court, ultimately making making the Second Amendment an individual right as opposed to a collective right. He is the person who is going to turn off the far right wing because he, in fact, prosecuted not only Ted Kaczynski but also the
McVeigh
and the Oklahoma City bomber.
2 young lads that were set up for that.
Yeah. And you've got the fact that he is going to annoy a bunch of liberals because he is the judge who voted to keep Guantanamo open, and he's a reliable vote for throw him in the, lock him up and throw away the key criminal justice.
I think he's actually a terrible candidate.
Well, he's a terrible justice.
Well,
he's also an apologist for the administrative state. He is very reluctant to overturn the judgment, the edicts, if you will, of the regulatory agencies. He's bad in every respect that I can possibly think of.
and I think he's actually, what he is bait. He threw Merrick out there, and all the liberal press is trying to make him out as being a moderate.
He's moderate only because he has the sensibilities of all the wrong things that the Republicans have going for them.
So what I think they're going to do is they'll shoot. No, even though he was a good candidate, but these rabid Republicans are so dead set against me doing the right thing that we're going to, and then he'll put somebody else out there. So I think, an awful lot of justices' nominations are withdrawn.
I think
his is going to be withdrawn.
I'm not sure. I think, it might be. I think the end game might be that they just stall as far as giving him hearings is concerned until we have a lame duck Congress. And if it's lame duck with Hillary as a winner, then they'll confirm him. Because they would rather confirm him than somebody that Hillary would pick.
Well,
If he
Hillary
stays out there
might
that
pick.
long.
No, she wouldn't pick Obama. No, they hate each other.
Yeah, well, who knows?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
then that brings up the last question for the night.
It's scary.
Would we? I remember. You're not old enough to remember this, but John and I are old enough to remember the 90s.
No, speak for yourself, man. I don't
When
remember.
Clinton was president and the Republicans controlled Congress, we had that wonderful thing called divided government, like we've had for the last 8 years.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. We could
the-
hate Clinton and
is the-
enjoy the fact that government stayed out of our house, out of our pocket, mostly out of our
Would
wallet,
a
out of our
Clinton
bedroom.
presidency, Republican Congress be the worst of all possible worlds?
I think it'd be good.
At all?
I think it'd
might
be
a
good.
good thing. Okay.
You would have.
See, you got to say that we are the eternal optimists here.
Yeah.
That's the show. We'll see you again next week, same time, same place on the Libertarian Counterpoint, on the web at accesssacramento.org, on YouTube, and on where else? The television set. We'll see you again next week. Bye.